Have you ever had just seconds to make a life or death decision? Imagine driving through a blinding blizzard, visibility near zero, temperature plummeting below zero, when something catches your eye. A small movement in a snowbank that most would miss. This is exactly what happened to Mike Anderson on what should have been just another long-haul drive. But what he spotted in that split second would lead to one of the most incredible rescue stories we've ever shared. The storm had been raging for 2 days straight. Roads abandoned. Warnings to stay inside ignored by only the most essential workers. Mike was behind schedule, exhausted, and fighting to see even 10 feet ahead through his windshield wipers, working overtime against the relentless snow. Something just didn't look right, Mike told us later, his voice still emotional, recalling that moment. It was this dark spot against all that white. And then I saw it move. Just barely. What Mike spotted was Luna, a desperate German Shepherd mother, creating a last stand against nature itself. For 48 grueling hours, Luna had been using her body as a living shield, protecting her 3 tiny puppies from temperatures that had already dropped to -15 degrees. The odds of survival were vanishing by the minute. Veterinarians later confirmed that without intervention, Luna and her puppies would have frozen to death within hours, maybe even minutes. But fate had other plans when Mike's truck emerged through the whiteout conditions at precisely the right moment. Mike had exactly 3 seconds to decide whether to stop or continue his urgent delivery. 3 seconds that would determine whether Luna and her puppies would survive or become another tragic casualty of the merciless winter storm. The heartbreaking reality. We discovered later that at least 17 vehicles had driven past that same spot earlier that day. 17 chances for rescue that never came. But what made Mike different? What made him notice what others had missed? "I can't explain it," Mike said, shaking his head. "It was like something was telling me to stop. I couldn't have lived with myself if I just kept driving." What happened in the next few minutes was nothing short of miraculous. As Mike approached through knee-deep snow, Luna's reaction revealed everything about her desperate situation. Though severely weakened from hunger and cold, her maternal instinct remained fierce. Teeth bared, body trembling but positioned protectively over her puppies, she was prepared to use her last ounce of strength to fight off what she perceived as another threat. Have you ever experienced that moment when an animal in desperate need finally begins to trust you? Tell us about your rescue story in the comments below. The critical moment came next, that breathtaking instant when rescue either succeeds or fails. Mike would need to somehow convince this terrified mother that he represented salvation, not danger. The temperature was still dropping, the wind chill now approaching -25. Every second Luna and her puppies remained exposed decreased their chances of survival. And yet rushing this moment of first contact could prove fatal in a different way, causing Luna to either attack or flee deeper into the snow with her puppies. What Mike did next, and Luna's response, created one of the most powerful moments of trust we've ever witnessed on camera. Hit that like button and subscribe to Eternal Bonds right now to see the exact moment Luna decided to trust Mike, and the amazing transformation that followed within minutes. What Mike did next showed the kind of instinctive understanding that can only come from a genuinely compassionate heart. Rather than rushing forward, a move that could have sent Luna deeper into defensive mode, he slowly lowered his body, crouching in the snow just 15 feet away. The temperature had dropped another 2 degrees in just the few minutes since he'd stopped his truck. "I knew we didn't have much time," Mike later explained, his voice catching slightly as he recalled the moment. "But rushing would have been the worst thing I could do. I had to somehow communicate to her that I wasn't a threat, that I was her only chance." Luna's eyes never left Mike's. Her body remained rigid over her puppies, who were now barely moving beneath her. A dangerous sign that hypothermia was setting in. You could see her breath forming thick clouds in the frigid air, each exhale growing more labored than the last. What happened next shows the incredible instinct that has evolved between humans and dogs over thousands of years of companionship. Mike slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out the remains of his lunch. a half-eaten beef jerky stick he'd been saving for later. Breaking off a small piece, he extended his hand, palm flat, and simply waited. It felt like forever, Mike remembered. But looking back at the footage from my phone that I'd propped up on a snowbank, it was exactly 27 seconds. 27 seconds that decided 4 lives! For those tense 27 seconds, Luna remained frozen, her eyes darting between Mike's face and his outstretched hand. Her puppies were completely silent now, another warning sign. The only sound was the howling wind and the distant rumble of Mike's truck engine, still running to keep the heat ready. Then came the moment. The exact instant that changed everything. Luna's posture shifted almost imperceptibly at first, her head tilting slightly, her ears moving forward instead of flat against her head. And then she took one hesitant step toward Mike, leaving her puppies exposed for the first split second since he'd arrived. When she took that step, I knew we had a chance, Mike said. It was like she was making this impossible choice. Risk trusting a stranger, or watch her babies freeze to death. Luna took another step, then another. Each one visibly painful as her paws broke through the icy crust that had formed on the snow's surface. Mike remained absolutely still, his hand outstretched, the small piece of beef jerky still waiting. When she finally reached his hand, Luna didn't immediately take the food. Instead, she did something that experienced rescuers recognize as the ultimate sign of desperate trust. She briefly looked away from Mike, glancing back at her puppies, essentially saying, "I'm trusting you not to hurt me while I'm not watching." That fleeting moment of vulnerable trust is what separates successful rescues from failed attempts. And Mike, operating purely on instinct, understood its significance perfectly. Luna quickly took the jerky, swallowing it in one desperate gulp. It was likely the first food she'd had in days, but instead of immediately offering more, Mike did something unexpected. He slowly removed his heavy outer glove, exposing his bare hand to the biting cold. I wanted her to smell me, to know I was human, not just a shape in the storm, he explained. Extending his bare hand, palm down, fingers slightly curled to appear less threatening, Mike waited once again. Luna hesitated, then stretched her neck forward and sniffed his fingertips. The evolution that followed happened with surprising speed. Her tail, which had been tucked tightly against her body, moved slightly. Not quite a wag, but no longer signaling absolute fear. This was the critical turning point, the exact moment when the rescue became possible. Luna let out a small whine, then turned and walked back to her puppies. But instead of positioning herself over them defensively, she nudged them gently, as if urging them to wake up. Mike understood immediately what needed to happen next. Moving slowly but deliberately, he removed his heavy winter coat and laid it open on the snow beside him. Then, speaking in a low, gentle voice, the actual words matter less than the soothing tone, he approached Luna and her puppies. I just kept talking to her, telling her it was going to be okay, that she was doing the right thing by trusting me, Mike recalled. I don't know if she understood my words, but she definitely understood my intention. What happened next reveals the extraordinary trust that can form between species in moments of crisis. Luna stepped slightly aside, allowing Mike to see her puppies fully for the first time. 3 tiny bodies, their black and tan fur almost completely covered in snow, barely moving. My heart just sank, Mike said. They looked so small and still. I wasn't sure if we were already too late. Mike gently reached down and picked up the first puppy. The tiny body was cold to the touch, its eyes firmly closed. Luna watched intently, her body tense but no longer aggressive. Mike quickly placed the puppy in the center of his opened coat, then reached for the second, and finally the third. Each time he touched one of her babies, Luna's eyes remained fixed on his hands, but the trust established in those crucial first moments held. She was allowing this stranger to handle her most precious possessions, her vulnerable offspring. With all 3 puppies now bundled in his coat, Mike looked at Luna and patted the makeshift nest he'd created. What she did next left even Mike, who shared this story with us months later, emotional in the retelling. Luna immediately understood. She stepped onto the coat and curled her body around her puppies, helping to warm them with what little body heat she had left. This moment of comprehension between human and animal, this unspoken communication, represents the exact kind of bond that gives our channel its name. With Luna and her puppies now huddled together on his coat, Mike faced his next challenge. They were still exposed to the merciless storm, and temperature readings on his truck's dashboard had dropped to -17. The puppies needed immediate warmth beyond what Luna's weakened body could provide. "I knew we had maybe minutes, not hours," Mike recalled. Those tiny bodies were so cold, and Luna herself was shivering uncontrollably. "I had to get them to the truck, fast." But Mike faced an immediate dilemma that would require another split-second decision. Should he carry the puppies first, leaving Luna behind? Or should he somehow try to move them all at once? The wrong choice could destroy the fragile trust he'd just established with Luna. As Mike gently gathered the edge of his coat, creating a makeshift sling for the puppies, Luna's eyes never left his hands. The tension in her body was visible, a mother prepared to react instantly if her baby seemed threatened. But something remarkable was already happening. Though still wary, Luna was allowing this stranger to handle her most precious possessions. "I made this sort of cradle with my coat, puppies inside, and then I just looked at Luna and patted my leg," Mike explained. "I was thinking, please understand what I'm asking. Please trust me enough to follow." What happened next demonstrates the extraordinary intelligence of dogs, particularly German Shepherds. Without a leash, without any prior relationship, Luna made the decision to follow Mike through the blinding snow toward his truck. Her trust in this stranger now outweighing her fear of the unknown. Every step was a struggle through snow that reached above Mike's knees in places. The distance to his truck, merely 50 yards, felt like miles as he balanced the precious bundle of puppies while continually checking to ensure Luna remained close behind. She stumbled a few times, Mike remembered, emotion catching in his voice. She was clearly exhausted, probably hadn't eaten in days, but she never took her eyes off those puppies. Her determination was, I don't have words for it. When they finally reached the truck, Mike faced another critical moment. He needed to open the door, place the puppies inside, and then somehow convince Luna to enter this unfamiliar enclosed space, all while keeping his movements slow and reassuring. The truck's interior light illuminated the scene as Mike carefully placed the bundle of puppies on the passenger floor. Luna hesitated at the open door, her body language showing clear apprehension about entering this strange metal box. Her instincts as a wild creature warned against it, but her maternal drive to stay with her puppies pulled her forward. "I just stepped back, giving her space to decide," Mike said. "I knew forcing her would break everything we'd built. It had to be her choice." For 23 agonizing seconds, Luna stood at the threshold, the bitter wind whipping snow around her thin frame. Then came another turning point, one of those breathtaking moments of trust that defines these rescue stories. Luna made her decision. She jumped up into the truck, immediately moving to her puppies and beginning to lick them vigorously. The change in environment was dramatic. From -17 degrees to the blessed warmth of Mike's truck heater blasting at full strength. As Mike carefully closed the door and circled around to the driver's side, he could already see the first signs of transformation beginning. "It's incredible how quickly things started to change," Mike told us. "Just in the minute it took me to get in the driver's seat, Luna had already stopped shivering so violently, and one of the puppies had started making these tiny squeaking sounds, the first noise I'd heard from any of them." Inside the heated cab, Mike created a more comfortable nest for the family, using his emergency blanket from behind the seat to supplement his coat. Luna watched his every movement, no longer with suspicion, but with what Mike describes as cautious acceptance. Her eyes still tracked his hands, but her body posture had shifted, less rigid, shoulders lowering slightly, the first hints of relaxation beginning to show. The puppies, responding to the warmth, began to move more actively. Their tiny legs stretched and retracted, small heads bobbing as they sought their mother's warmth. Their eyes remained closed, Mike later learned they were approximately 3 weeks old, still days away from opening their eyes to the world. Watching those little bodies start to warm up and move again, that was the moment I knew we'd beaten the clock, Mike said. But Luna was still in rough shape, severely dehydrated, ribs showing through her coat. She needed more than just warmth. Mike reached slowly into his lunch cooler and retrieved a bottle of water. Finding a clean container from his cup holder, he poured some water and cautiously offered it to Luna. The moment she recognized it as water, her restraint vanished. She drank desperately, emptying the container in seconds. The sound of her drinking, how frantically she needed that water, it told me everything about how long she'd been out there fighting to keep those puppies alive, Mike explained. As the truck's powerful heater continued working its magic, Mike faced his next dilemma. The storm was intensifying, roads were becoming impassable, and his delivery deadline was long past. He needed to make some calls, explain his situation, and figure out where to take this small family he'd just rescued from certain death. That moment when she put her head down, when she finally felt safe enough to rest. It hit me hard, Mike said, pausing to collect himself. You could just see the exhaustion washing over her, but also this tentative relief, like she was allowing herself to believe they might actually survive. The puppies, now noticeably more active, began nursing as Luna rested. Their tiny movements strengthened by the minute as life-saving warmth returned to their small bodies. The transformation happening in that truck cab was nothing short of miraculous. From the brink of freezing to death to the first tentative steps toward recovery, all within the span of 30 minutes. As Mike made his necessary phone calls, explaining his delayed delivery and current situation, Luna's eyes remained open, watching him. But something had changed in that gaze. The desperate fear was fading, replaced by something Mike recognized immediately: the beginning of trust. While I was on the phone with my dispatcher, Luna did something I'll never forget, Mike recalled, smiling at the memory. She stretched her neck out and gently nudged my elbow with her nose. Just this small gesture, but in that moment, it felt like she was saying, "Thank you." Or maybe it was her way of checking if I was still paying attention to them. Either way, it was the first time she'd initiated contact with me. While Mike made his calls, a remarkable change was already taking place inside that warm truck cab. Luna, still watchful, but no longer fearful, continued to nurse her puppies, while occasionally glancing up at Mike with what he could only describe as cautious appreciation. The truck's heater hummed steadily, enveloping the small family in life-saving warmth. My dispatcher wasn't exactly thrilled about the delivery delay, Mike explained with a small laugh. But when I sent her a photo of Luna and the puppies, everything changed. She told me to forget the deadline and focus on getting them somewhere safe. That somewhere safe became Mike's next challenge. The storm was intensifying by the minute, roads were becoming increasingly dangerous, and animal services in the rural area were limited at best, especially during a severe weather event. Mike faced the kind of decision that reveals a person's true character: what to do when there's no clear guidebook for doing the right thing. I made about 6 calls in 20 minutes, Mike recalled. Animal shelters were either closed due to the storm or already overwhelmed. The nearest emergency vet was over 50 miles away, through roads that were rapidly becoming impassable. As Mike navigated this dilemma, Luna made another breakthrough. While he spoke on the phone, she cautiously stood, circled in the limited space, and then, in a moment that Mike still describes with wonder, she deliberately lay down closer to him, allowing her body to rest against his leg. That moment. Mike paused, visibly moved by the memory. That's when I knew we'd crossed some invisible line. From her seeing me as possibly dangerous to recognizing me as safe. It's fascinating how quickly animals can assess a situation and adapt when their survival depends on it. The puppies, now warmer and more active, began making soft squeaking sounds as they continued nursing. Their tiny bodies, which had been frighteningly still when Mike first found them, now wriggled with renewed life force. Each small movement was a victory against the deadly cold that had nearly claimed them. After exhausting his options for immediate professional help, Mike made the decision that would forever change 4 lives. "I told my dispatcher I was taking them to my house," he said simply. "It wasn't even really a choice at that point. I couldn't exactly drop them off on the side of the road again, and waiting any longer in a truck in a worsening blizzard wasn't an option." With Luna and her puppies secured in the makeshift nest on the passenger side floor, Mike carefully turned the truck around and began the slow journey toward his home. The 15-mile drive took nearly an hour through the treacherous conditions, with visibility often reduced to mere feet ahead of the windshield. Throughout the tense drive, Luna remained calm, a stark contrast to her defensive posture when Mike had first approached her in the snow. She seemed to understand, on some primal level, that this journey was taking her family towards safety rather than greater danger. "I kept talking to her the whole way," Mike remembered, just telling her she was doing great, that the puppies were going to be okay, that we were almost there. I don't know if it helped her, but it definitely helped me stay focused on what mattered. When they finally arrived at Mike's modest rural home, he faced another critical moment. Would Luna willingly exit the truck and enter this new, unknown environment? Or would the trust they'd built be tested by yet another transition? Mike carefully gathered the puppies in his coat once again and opened the passenger door. Luna watched intently, her eyes never leaving her puppies. "I just stepped out, holding her babies, and waited," Mike said. "I didn't pull, didn't coax, just stood there in the snow and trusted she would make the right choice." For 17 seconds, Mike later checked the timestamp on his security camera footage, Luna stood frozen at the edge of the truck seat, surveying this new territory. Then, with a small whine that seemed to express both uncertainty and determination, she jumped down into the snow and stood beside Mike. Together, they made their way to the front door, Luna staying so close that her fur occasionally brushed against Mike's legs. This small detail, her willingness to maintain proximity rather than keeping a fearful distance, speaks volumes about how quickly trust can form in life or death situations. Inside Mike's warm home, the next phase of the transformation began immediately. Mike created a comfortable space in his living room, using clean blankets to form a nest large enough for Luna and her puppies. The contrast between this warm, safe environment and the snowbank where he'd found them just hours earlier couldn't have been more stark. Share in the comments how far you would go to rescue an animal in danger. Many people wonder if they would bring a stray animal into their home. Your stories of compassion inspire others to take action when the moment arrives. "I wasn't sure if she'd use the bed I made," Mike said. "But she went right to it, inspected it thoroughly. You could see her sniffing every inch, and then she very carefully moved each puppy from my coat to the new bed, one by one." This behavior, methodical, intentional, and showing clear decision-making, demonstrated both Luna's intelligence and her growing comfort in this new environment. She was no longer acting purely from desperate survival instinct, but was beginning to make choices based on assessment rather than fear. While Luna settled her puppies, Mike prepared a small meal for her, some cooked chicken he had in the refrigerator mixed with a bit of rice. When he presented it to her, Luna's reaction revealed just how hungry she had been. "She ate so fast, I was worried she might make herself sick," Mike recalled. "But she needed it so badly. I gave her small portions several times over the next few hours, instead of one large meal. After eating, drinking more water, and ensuring her puppies were nursing properly, Luna did something that brought tears to Mike's eyes when he shared the story. She left the puppies, just for a moment, to come sit beside me on the couch. She didn't jump up, just placed her head on my knee and looked up with these eyes that, well, anyone who loves dogs knows that look. It's pure connection." This moment, when Luna voluntarily left her puppies briefly to acknowledge Mike, represents the kind of emotional breakthrough that defines rescue stories. It wasn't just gratitude, it was recognition of safety, of trust established, of a bond forming that transcended their brief history together. As the evening progressed, Luna continued to show signs of deepening trust. She allowed Mike to gently examine each puppy, checking for any concerning symptoms of hypothermia or other issues. The puppies, now consistently active and vocal, showed remarkable resilience considering their ordeal. "I'll never forget sitting on the floor beside them that first night," Mike shared. "Luna would close her eyes, then suddenly open them to check that I was still there. Each time, she'd relax a bit more until finally she actually fell into what seemed like her first deep sleep in days." As the evening faded into night, the exhaustion of their ordeal finally caught up with both of them. Mike drifted off on the couch, his last conscious sight being Luna's watchful eyes slowly blinking closed, perhaps her first moment of true rest since the storm began. As the first light of dawn filtered through Mike's living room windows, he awoke on the couch where he'd dozed off, keeping a watchful eye on Luna and her puppies throughout the night. What he saw next created one of those unforgettable moments that define rescue stories. Luna was already awake, her eyes alert but calm as she watched over her 3 puppies. The evolution from the desperate, freezing mother he'd found in the snow just 12 hours earlier was remarkable. Her coat, though still thin from evident malnourishment, had regained some luster after being cleaned and warmed. But it wasn't her physical appearance that struck Mike most forcefully. "I'll never forget the look in her eyes that first morning," Mike recalled, his voice softening at the memory. "It wasn't fear anymore. It wasn't even just relief. There was this awareness. Like she was truly seeing me for the first time as her family's protector, not just some random human who'd helped during a crisis. This evolution of trust, from desperate acceptance of help during an emergency to genuine recognition of safety, represents one of the most powerful aspects of rescue stories. Within just hours, Luna had begun a transformation that would usually take days or even weeks." As Mike sat up, Luna's ears perked forward, and her tail, which had been tucked tightly against her body when he'd first found her, gave a tentative wag. This small gesture, this first voluntary expression of happiness, hit Mike with unexpected emotional force. "That first little wag?" Mike paused, visibly moved by the memory. It sounds so simple, but anyone who's rescued a scared dog knows exactly what that means. It's like they're saying, "I'm starting to believe I'm actually safe here." The morning brought practical challenges. Mike needed to have Luna and her puppies checked by a veterinarian, but the storm had left roads hazardous, and his rural location meant limited options. After making several calls, he found a vet willing to conduct a video consultation until roads cleared enough for an in-person visit. During the video call, the veterinarian provided crucial guidance. The puppies, estimated to be about 3 weeks old, appeared to have escaped serious harm from their cold ordeal, largely thanks to Luna's tireless protection. Luna herself showed signs of malnourishment and mild frostbite on her paw pads, but nothing life-threatening. The vet said Luna's maternal instinct likely saved those puppies' lives, Mike explained. She had positioned herself perfectly to block the wind and give them her body heat. Even in her weakened state, her first priority was protecting her babies. Following the veterinarian's advice, Mike prepared a more substantial meal for Luna, small portions offered frequently to avoid overwhelming her system. What happened next revealed another milestone in their evolving relationship. "I set Luna's food bowl down, about 5 feet away from where she was nursing the puppies," Mike remembered. In normal circumstances, a mother dog would immediately go to the food. But Luna looked at the bowl, then at her puppies, then at me, like she was asking permission to leave them briefly. Mike nodded encouragingly and patted the space next to the bowl. Luna hesitated just a moment longer, then carefully stood and walked to the food, her eyes darting back to check on her puppies every few seconds. "That moment told me so much about what she'd been through," Mike said. "She was clearly starving, but she'd learned somehow that leaving her puppies, even for a moment, could be dangerous. The fact that she was willing to trust me enough to watch them while she ate, that was huge." As Luna ate, the remarkable change continued. Her movements became less hesitant, her body language more relaxed. After finishing her meal, she did something that completely surprised Mike. Instead of immediately returning to her puppies, she approached him and gently pressed her head against his knee. "That head press. Dog owners know what that means," Mike explained, emotion evident in his voice. "It's not just affection, it's trust, it's vulnerability. For a dog who had likely been abandoned and left to die in a blizzard with her puppies, to show that level of trust so quickly, it's extraordinary. The morning unfolded with small but significant moments of progressive trust. Luna began allowing Mike to sit closer to her puppies, eventually permitting him to gently stroke each one while she watched attentively. The puppies, responding to their mother's increased relaxation, became more animated, their tiny legs kicking and small sounds emerging as they nursed and slept. By midday, another remarkable shift occurred. Luna began actively including Mike in the care of her puppies. When one of them wiggled away from the nest, instead of immediately retrieving the puppy herself, Luna looked to Mike, then at the straying puppy, as if asking for assistance. She was essentially communicating. "Can you help me with this one?" Mike recalled with wonder. That level of co-parenting, that willingness to share responsibility for her most precious possessions, it demonstrates extraordinary intelligence and adaptability. When Mike gently returned the wayward puppy to the nest, Luna's response cemented their partnership. She carefully inspected the puppy, then looked up at Mike and gave several deliberate tail wags, a clear thank you in canine communication. As the day progressed, Luna's maternal instincts remained strong, but her demeanor continued evolving from desperate protection to confident motherhood in a secure environment. She began accepting longer periods away from her puppies, exploring Mike's home with growing curiosity while continually checking back to ensure her babies remained safe. By that afternoon, she'd mapped every exit in the house, Mike said with a smile. She wasn't looking to escape. She was creating a mental safety plan. You could almost see her thinking, "If there's danger, here's how I'll get my puppies out." She was still being a protective mother, just in a different way. The most profound moment came that evening, as Mike sat on the floor near the puppy nest, scrolling through his phone to research proper care for newborn puppies. Luna approached with purpose, carrying one of her puppies gently in her mouth. With deliberate care, she placed the tiny pup in Mike's lap, then looked up at him expectantly. "I was completely stunned," Mike remembered, still visibly moved by the memory. This wasn't an accident or confusion. She was actively choosing to share her puppy with me, to literally place her baby in my care. For anyone who understands dog behavior, this represents the ultimate trust. The profound trust Luna demonstrated by entrusting her puppy to Mike was just the beginning. In the days that followed, their bond would deepen in ways that surprised even experienced rescuers who visited once the roads cleared. In the days that followed, the transformation of Luna and her puppies accelerated at a pace that stunned even experienced rescuers who visited Mike's home once roads cleared. Each milestone happened faster than anyone expected, a testament to the immediate bond that can form when an animal recognizes true safety after extreme danger. The morning after Luna gave me her puppy, Mike recalled, I woke up to find that she'd moved all 3 puppies to my bedroom during the night. She wasn't just trusting me to interact with them anymore. She was actively choosing to keep them close to me. That's when I realized something profound was happening here. By the 5th day, Luna's physical transformation was already remarkable. Her coat, which had been dull and brittle from malnutrition and cold exposure, began regaining its natural luster. The slight limp from frostbite on her paw pads had disappeared. But the most striking change was in her eyes. The haunted, desperate look replaced by clear, bright awareness, and what could only be described as contentment. It was like watching someone come back to life, Mike explained, his voice filled with emotion. Not just physically, but emotionally. She started doing these little playful bows around day 5. Something I learned is a sign that a dog feels completely safe and happy. The puppies, meanwhile, reached their own milestone, opening their eyes for the first time in safety rather than danger. That moment, which Mike captured on video, shows Luna's immediate reaction, gently nudging each puppy toward Mike as if to say, "Look what's happening. They can see you now." When veterinarians were finally able to examine the family properly, they confirmed what the change had already made visually obvious. Luna and her puppies had not only survived their ordeal, but were thriving. The puppies, initially at risk of developmental delays due to hypothermia and nutritional deficits, showed no signs of lasting impacts. "The vet said something I'll never forget," Mike shared. "She told me, 'This isn't just rescue, this is restoration. You didn't just save lives, you restored this family's chance to thrive.' That restoration became even more evident in Luna's behavior. By the end of the second week, her maternal protectiveness had balanced with newfound playfulness. She began initiating games with Mike, bringing toys and engaging in gentle tug-of-war, her tail wagging continuously. One particularly powerful moment, which Mike describes as "when I knew I'd become part of their family," occurred when one of the puppies wandered too close to an open door. Luna, instead of retrieving the puppy herself, barked once to alert Mike to the situation, actively co-parenting with the human she now considered a permanent protector. "That bark wasn't fear or aggression," Mike explained. "It was communication. She was saying, 'Hey, one of the kids is heading where they shouldn't be.' She was treating me like her partner in protecting these puppies." As the puppies grew stronger and more active, Luna began allowing herself more rest, a luxury she couldn't afford during those desperate days in the snow. Mike would often find her deeply asleep on the couch beside him, completely relaxed and vulnerable, while the puppies played safely nearby. That level of relaxation, Mike noted, it's the ultimate sign of trust from a dog. When they'll sleep deeply next to you, not keeping one eye open, not remaining alert, that's when you know they feel absolutely secure. The transformation wasn't just one-sided. Mike, who had lived alone for several years after a difficult divorce, found himself changed by the experience as well. His daily routine, once solitary and sometimes lonely, now revolved around this small family that had literally emerged from a snowbank into his life. "I started seeing the world differently," he admitted. "Suddenly I was noticing things I'd missed before. Other animals in need, people struggling. It was like Luna taught me to pay closer attention to what really matters." When we asked Mike about his plans for Luna and her puppies, his answer came without hesitation. Their home. This is where they belong now. That sense of belonging, of an instant family formed through a moment of compassion, embodies the very essence of what eternal bonds celebrates. Sometimes the deepest connections are forged in the most unexpected circumstances, when a split-second decision to stop and help transforms not just the lives saved, but the rescuer as well. If this story of Luna and her puppies touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe to Eternal Bonds right now. Every subscription helps us share more stories of these life-changing rescues and the powerful bonds that form in moments of crisis. These stories matter. They remind us of the good still possible in our world. We'd love to know what moment in this rescue touched you most deeply. Was it when Mike first spotted Luna in the snow? When she first trusted him enough to take food from his hand? Or perhaps when she placed her puppy in his lap? Comment below with "trust moment" followed by the exact part that moved you most. Your comments help us understand which elements of these rescue stories resonate most deeply. And if Luna's maternal dedication touched you, you won't want to miss our next video. A rescue story featuring another mother dog whose protective instinct led to an even more surprising outcome when faced with a different kind of danger. The moment when this next mother dog realizes her puppies are truly safe might be the most powerful expression of relief we've ever captured on camera.